The night air was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to the skin like an unwelcome presence. The dim glow of the streetlights flickered as Evelyn Parker stepped out of her car, her tired eyes scanning the near-empty parking lot of Blackwood Diner. It was past midnight, and the diner was one of the few places still open. She sighed, adjusting her coat as she walked toward the entrance. Inside, the place was eerily silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. A lone waitress stood by the cash register, her back turned to Evelyn. Evelyn and her husband, Daniel, had been struggling financially. The bills were piling up: electricity, water, rent, and tonight, the diner bill was just one more expense she couldn't afford. She had convinced herself it was harmless. A simple meal. A small tab left unpaid. Who would even notice? She slid into a booth and waited. The waitress turned around slowly, revealing a pale, expressionless face. Her eyes were dark, almost hollow, as if she hadn't slept in years. "What can I get you?" the woman asked, her voice flat. "Just coffee," Evelyn said, forcing a smile. The waitress nodded, walking away. Something about the atmosphere unsettled Evelyn. It was as if the diner existed in a place outside of time, frozen, watching, waiting. As she sipped her coffee, her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "When are you coming home? It's getting late." Evelyn hesitated before replying. She had told Daniel she was running errands, avoiding the conversation about their overdue bills. He was already stressed enough, and she didn't want to add to it. The waitress returned with a check. The total was small, just a few dollars. Evelyn's fingers hovered over her purse, but she hesitated. The thought of spending even a few more dollars made her stomach churn. She looked around. No cameras. No other customers. The waitress had already disappeared into the kitchen. It would be easy. Just walk out. Her heart pounded as she stood up, glancing toward the counter one last time. The diner was still eerily quiet. She turned toward the door, pushing it open as a rush of cold air hit her face. And then, just as she stepped onto the pavement, a voice whispered behind her. "You forgot to pay." Evelyn spun around, but the door had already swung shut. The diner's neon sign flickered, and in that moment, something in the air shifted. She hurried to her car, an uneasy feeling settling in her chest. That night, she barely slept. Her dreams were filled with shadows lurking in the corners of her vision, whispering, watching. The next morning, Daniel was unusually quiet. He sat at the kitchen table, his coffee untouched, staring at the wall. "Are you okay?" Evelyn asked, rubbing his shoulder. He blinked slowly, as if emerging from a trance. "Yeah, just didn't sleep well." Evelyn nodded, brushing off her own unease. She wouldn't tell him about the unpaid bill. It was nothing. Just a diner. Just a few dollars. Or so she thought. That evening, Daniel didn't come home. Her calls went straight to voicemail. Hours passed, and her anxiety deepened. She paced the living room, watching the clock. Midnight came and went. Then, at 2:33 a.m., the phone rang. She snatched it up. "Daniel?" But there was no voice, only heavy breathing on the other end. "Who is this?" she demanded. A distorted voice finally spoke, slow and deliberate. "You forgot to pay." The line went dead. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She grabbed her keys and ran out the door, heart pounding as she drove through the empty streets. Something was terribly wrong, and she had a sinking feeling she knew exactly where to find him. The Blackwood Diner. Evelyn's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. The streets were deserted, bathed in the eerie glow of flickering streetlights. The further she drove, the quieter the world seemed to become, as if the night itself was holding its breath. The Blackwood Diner loomed ahead, its neon sign buzzing faintly. But something was wrong. The lights inside were dim, the windows impossibly dark. She pulled into the empty parking lot, her heart hammering in her chest. Stepping out of the car, she hesitated. The air felt heavy, unnatural. As she approached the door, it creaked open before she could touch it. A wave of cold air swept past her, carrying with it the faint scent of something rotten. "Daniel," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. No answer. She stepped inside. The diner was exactly as she had left it, the booths, the counter, the humming refrigerator. But now, the place felt abandoned. Dust coated the surfaces and the air was stale, thick with decay. She swallowed hard, forcing herself forward. The kitchen door swung slightly ajar, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. A sound came from inside, a slow, wet dragging noise. She took a shaky breath and pushed the door open. The kitchen was empty, save for the dim overhead light flickering erratically. The stainless steel counters were lined with rusted utensils, and the air smelled of damp earth and something metallic. A cold dread settled in her stomach. Then she saw it. A trail of dark, smeared footprints leading toward the walk-in freezer. The door stood slightly ajar, revealing only blackness beyond. A sickening sense of déjà vu washed over her. "You forgot to pay." The words echoed in her head as she slowly stepped toward the freezer. She hesitated at the threshold, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The temperature dropped drastically as she reached out with a shaking hand and pulled the door open wider. Inside, the cold mist swirled around a lone figure sitting on the floor. Daniel. Her heart lurched. He was hunched over, his head tilted downward, his body unnaturally still. "Daniel," she whispered, stepping inside. No response. She crouched beside him, reaching out to touch his shoulder. The moment her fingers brushed his skin, he moved. Too fast, too sudden. His head snapped up, and Evelyn let out a strangled gasp. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, staring at something unseen. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His skin was deathly pale, his veins dark beneath the surface. "Daniel, what?" His mouth opened, but the voice that came out wasn't his. "You forgot to pay." Evelyn stumbled backward, horror gripping her chest. Daniel's body convulsed, his hands twitching unnaturally. His head tilted at an impossible angle, and his lips stretched into a grotesque smile. "Debt must be paid." Then, in an instant, the lights went out. The room plunged into suffocating darkness, and Evelyn felt something move behind her. A breath, cold and heavy, brushed against the back of her neck. She spun around, but there was nothing. Only the deep, all-consuming black. Then Daniel screamed. It was a sound of pure agony, inhuman and raw. Evelyn fumbled for her phone, the screen casting a faint glow. In the dim light, she saw Daniel's body being pulled, dragged, into the shadows. His fingers clawed at the floor, his mouth open in a silent plea. "Evelyn, help." Then he was gone. The freezer door slammed shut behind her, sealing her in the darkness. She pounded on the metal, her scream swallowed by the oppressive silence. Then, just as suddenly as it had disappeared, the light returned. She was no longer in the freezer. She was sitting in the diner booth, her coffee steaming in front of her. The waitress stood beside her, holding the bill. "You forgot to pay," the woman said again, her voice calm. Evelyn's heart pounded as she stared at the check. It was blank. She turned to look beside her. Daniel was gone. The seat where he should have been was empty, except for a single, crumpled dollar bill. The realization hit her like a blow to the chest. Daniel was the price. Evelyn sat frozen in the booth, she had already paid. Her breath shallow, her hands trembling on the table. The waitress stood motionless beside her, the blank bill still extended. The air in the diner felt suffocating, thick with something unseen, something waiting. She turned her head slowly toward the seat where Daniel had been just moments ago. Gone. The only trace of him was the crumpled dollar bill, a cruel mockery of the debt she had refused to settle. Her stomach twisted. This isn't real. It can't be. She reached for the bill with shaking fingers, but the moment she touched it, the ink bled into existence. Words materialized, written in jagged, black strokes. One unpaid debt. One life taken. Evelyn's breath hitched. No. No, this isn't happening. She bolted upright, the chair screeching against the floor. "Where is he?" she demanded, turning to the waitress. The woman only tilted her head, eyes void of life. You forgot to pay, she repeated in that same, flat tone. Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears. She had to get out of here.
Now.
She turned toward the door, but the moment she took a step, the lights flickered. The hum of the refrigerator grew louder, a deep, rattling sound that sent shivers up her spine. Then a voice, a whisper, coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Evelyn. She froze. It was Daniel's voice, but it was wrong, distorted, hollow. She turned slowly, her blood running cold. Daniel stood in the kitchen doorway, but it wasn't him. His skin was deathly pale, his veins black and bulging like rotting vines beneath the surface. His head tilted at an unnatural angle, and his lips curled into a grotesque smile. His eyes, once warm, once familiar, were now empty sockets, swirling with darkness. Debt must be paid, he rasped. Evelyn stumbled back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. No, she choked out. No, this isn't real. This isn't. The lights flickered again. The diner warped. The walls twisted and cracked, revealing gaping, black voids beyond. The checkered floor peeled away, exposing a pit of writhing hands, clawing, reaching, hungry. The hum of the diner turned into a deafening roar, a chorus of whispers, screams, and laughter all at once. Daniel took a slow, shuddering step forward. Evelyn, he whispered, his voice breaking. It hurts. Tears burned her eyes. Daniel, I'm sorry. You forgot to pay. The voices merged into one, the sound rattling in her skull. The walls collapsed inward, the ceiling stretched into the abyss above. The world tore apart, and Evelyn fell, down, 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 into the endless black. She woke up in her bed,
Gasping.
sweating, heart racing. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting golden light across the room. The nightmare clung to her, suffocating real. She turned, reaching blindly for Daniel. The bed was empty. Her heart stopped. Daniel, she whispered. No answer. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. She dialed his number, her breath uneven. The line rang, and rang. Then click. A voice. Not his. You forgot to pay. Evelyn screamed. She dropped the phone, her pulse a violent drumbeat in her chest. She stumbled out of bed, nearly tripping over herself as she rushed to the living room. No sign of him. No proof he had ever been there at all. Then she saw it. On the kitchen table.
A check. The same diner bill from that night.
But now, beneath the total, one more charge had been added. Paid in full. And scrawled at the bottom, Daniel Parker, in place of Evelyn Parker. Her stomach dropped. Her knees buckled. The truth settled over her like a suffocating weight. She had taken a meal. A debt unpaid. And the universe had balanced the books. Daniel was gone.
Erased.
And no one would ever remember he existed. Her hands shook as she picked up the bill, her tears staining the paper. Then, from the darkness behind her, a voice whispered, "Would you like to open another tab?" The lights flickered. The air turned ice cold.